Welcome back, Focus Learners. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for another explainer today. We are jumping right into a really incredible piece of ancient literature, Psalm 65. Now, what makes this specific text so deeply fascinating, and honestly kind of surprising, is how it masterfully weaves together three totally distinct themes that you really wouldn't expect to see side by side. We're going to look at how this poem seamlessly blends the intimacy of human failure and forgiveness, the absolute jaw-dropping awe of cosmic power, and then finally, the really earthy, tangible joy of an abundant agricultural harvest. It is a brilliant journey of scale, and I cannot wait to unpack the whole shebang with you. Okay, let's dive into this text. Just to make sure we're all on exactly the same page, we're going to be strictly analyzing the English Standard Version of this psalm today, which is titled, O God of Our Salvation. Right at the top, you'll see this is a song attributed to David, directed to the choir master. Having the actual text right in front of us is absolutely crucial here, because the specific vocabulary and structure are exactly what give this poem its enduring power. Here is the roadmap for our explainer today. We're following the author's four-part narrative arc, starting with grace in the temple, moving out to cosmic power and awe, zooming back in for the agricultural bounty, and finishing up with the joy of creation. Let's get to it. Part 1. Grace in the Temple. This section covers verses 1 through 4. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how specific the author gets right out of the gate. Verse 1 establishes Zion as the geographic and spiritual anchor for the psalmist's entire worldview. This isn't just some general abstract prayer thrown out into the ether, right? It's grounded in a physical place, a place where praise is due and where very real human vows are actually performed. It sets a beautifully tangible stage for this divine encounter. And right away we hit this brilliant textual nuance. The main text says, "Praise is due to you." But if you peek at the footnotes for verse 1, there's a fascinating alternate translation. Praise waits for you in silence. Now, we typically associate praise with loud singing or shouting, right? But this alternate reading totally flips that expectation on its head. It suggests that sometimes the most profound human response to the divine is just a silent, expectant waiting in that sacred space. The rest of this opening movement paints a remarkably objective picture of the human condition. The text notes that all flesh comes to the hearer of prayer, which really emphasizes a universal human need. It acknowledges a pretty stark reality, too. Iniquities prevail against me. Yet that human failure is immediately met with divine action. You atone for our transgressions. So, the ultimate resolution for the human experience here isn't found in human effort at all. It's found in being chosen, brought near, and ultimately satisfied by the goodness and holiness found in these temple courts. All right, we shift gears entirely in part 2, Cosmic Power and Awe. This takes us through verses 5 through 8. Just look at the massive geographic extremes the author suddenly introduces to illustrate this scale. We're zooming way, way out. The deity being praised is no longer just the god of one specific location. They are the hope of all the ends of the earth and of the farthest seas. The text describes a deity who, by his strength, established the mountains, being girded with might. The imagery here is incredibly vast, heavy, and totally immovable. It's all about emphasizing absolute cosmic sovereignty. And this brilliantly illustrates the central conflict and resolution of this second section. The poem purposefully juxtaposes the ultimate symbols of chaos, the roaring of the seas, the roaring of their waves, and even the tumult of the peoples, against the absolute stillness brought by divine power. Nature and humanity are depicted as totally chaotic and loud, but the deity simply stills them. That sheer dramatic contrast is exactly what commands the awe mentioned over in verse 8. The cosmic scale is highlighted even further by how the poem treats time itself. It's not just the physical mountains and the oceans that respond to this power. The text actually says, "You make the going out of the morning and the evening to shout for joy." The very borders of the day, the dawn and the dusk, are personified, reacting to these divine signs with joyful shouting. It is just an incredibly poetic way to say that literally all of time and space is enveloped in this awe. Which brings us to part 3, the agricultural bounty, found in verses 9 through 12. Now we zoom sharply back down into the literal dirt. The psalmist here frames the divine not just as some distant mountain builder out in the cosmos, but as an active, incredibly intimate participant in the Earth's agricultural cycle. You visit the earth and water it. You greatly enrich it. The language here feels so much more hands-on. The architect of the universe is portrayed almost as this master gardener,
personally tending to the soil to make sure it's enriched.
Verse 9 mentions that the river of God is full of water. And if we look closely at another really brilliant footnote in our source text, footnote B, we see that this action of watering can also be translated as make it overflow. So the divine river isn't just giving the earth a light, gentle sprinkle. It is abundantly overflowing specifically to provide and prepare the grain for the harvest.
Let's move to and see how this builds into an actual agricultural methodology. Look at verse 10 with me. We get a highly structured, literal step-by-step farming process hidden perfectly within this ancient poetry. First, watering the furrows abundantly. Second, settling its ridges. Third, softening the ground with showers. And finally, blessing its growth. It is a remarkably precise observation of what the land physically needs to produce food, and it's all attributed to divine provision.
All of this meticulous care leads to the incredible tactile imagery in verse 11. You crown the year with your bounty. Your wagon tracks overflow with abundance. Try to actually picture that for a second. A harvest so heavy, so incredibly bountiful, that as the heavy carts are being dragged out of the muddy fields, the physical ruts and wagon tracks left behind are literally overflowing with the dropped excess of the crops. It's an image of absolute, overwhelming provision.
This massive abundance launches us straight into our final sequence, Part 4, the joy of creation, landing in verse 13. The imagery peaks with this incredibly powerful quote from verse 13. The meadows clothe themselves with flocks. The valleys deck themselves with grain. They shout and sing together for joy. This right here is the climax of the poem. The boundary between human celebration and nature completely dissolves. Nature itself takes on human characteristics to celebrate the survival and abundance. Let's break down these specific literary choices because they are exactly what make the text so vibrant. The author leans heavily into personification here. The pastures overflow, the hills literally gird or dress themselves with joy, the meadows treat the flocks of sheep like clothing, and the valleys deck themselves out in grain as if they're putting on jewelry for a massive festival. Treating the hills and valleys as these joyful, dressed-up characters brings this ancient text to vibrant life for any reader, whether they were reading it centuries ago or were reading it today. So the crucial point is this. Psalm 65 isn't just a nice poem about rain or mountains or a temple. It's an entirely cohesive worldview. It really forces us to ask, how does viewing our immediate physical survival, like the rain and the crops, as deeply intertwined with both cosmic order and intimate spiritual forgiveness, completely change how we understand ancient cultures? You see, for the author, the God who forgives sins in the quiet temple is the exact same God who silences the oceans and physically waters the dirt for the harvest. It's all connected. I really hope the structural look at the text gives you a brand new appreciation for the depth of ancient literature, and I highly encourage you to keep exploring these fascinating connections on your own. Thanks for joining me.